As a writing coach and developmental editor, these are the 7 biggest mistakes I see nonfiction authors make. Mistake number 1, including too much information. So because I primarily work with all genres across nonfiction, but specifically self-help, business, and finance, I find that these are subject matter experts and they know their subject matter inside and out. But there's 2 things that you need to remember as a nonfiction author. Number 1, this is your first book. And if you're looking to have a career in writing, you want to start to think about it not just as one book, but how you see maybe the first 5 books that you plan to write. And in doing so, that'll give you an idea of how much information you need to provide to the reader in that first book. Another way this can show up is by going off on tangents. So you want to make sure that the information you're providing is concise. So you're looking at maybe 100 to 150 pages within a book. And if you're going off on tangents, it's going to feel that way to the reader and it's going to feel overwhelming. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on your core message because you don't want to overwhelm your reader. If you overwhelm your reader, especially very early on in the book, a lot of times they'll abandon the book, but also leave you a bad review. So you want to stay on focus and make sure that you're keeping all the information concise. Mistake number 2 is poor organization within chapters. So this is one of the areas that I'm looking at as a developmental editor. I'm looking at the structure of your writing. Are you putting things in a logical order that will get the reader from where they are to where they need to be? So the first thing that you want to do to avoid this is to make sure that you're creating an outline. And within your outline, it doesn't have to be anything too complicated. You just want to be simple and say, this is what I'm going to talk about in each one of the chapters. You're going to also want to make sure that you're not repeating the same information from chapter to chapter or burying good content within long paragraphs. All of that is considered to be structure. So having long paragraphs or not putting things in a logical order or not tying your ideas together correctly is all a structural issue. And all of that can be avoided by writing a solid outline. Mistake number 3, making assumptions about the reader's knowledge. Now, this will look different depending on the genre that you're writing in, but examples of this would be using jargon without explanation. So for example, if you were writing in the finance genre and you might be talking about a Roth IRA, it may be that your audience does not know what that is. Maybe they know what a bank account is, maybe they know what a CD is, but if you keep talking about it within your book and you're not giving a proper explanation, it can become confusing for the reader and disengage the reader as well. So you want to avoid making that mistake. Mistake number 4, not establishing credibility properly. So if you're a client of mine, then you know this is one of those things that I'll often preach, making sure you establish your expertise or your authority very early in the book, which typically is going to be within the introduction. And the reason why you want to do this is because you want to make sure that the reader knows why you're qualified to give this information. You want to be relatable to the reader, and also you want to engage the reader. So by sharing what your experience is, whether it's your life experience, your work experience, or even your education, you are essentially setting that first chapter up to let the reader know, hey, I'm qualified to talk about this subject matter, and I understand where you are, and here's how I will help you. Mistake number 5, waiting too long to start building an audience. Now, honestly, this could have been mistake number 1 because not only is it the biggest mistake, but it's also the most common mistake that I see authors make. Now, there's a lot of different understandable reasons why this happens. For some, they're simply scared to share with their audience that they're writing a book. And for others, they're simply being cautious because they're not sure or they're not confident enough that they'll be able to finish the writing and actually be able to materialize this book that they've promised to their target audience, both of which are understandable reasons. But the reason why it's important to share with your audience that you're writing your book is because when you finally launch your book, you want to make sure that you have an engaged audience. And the key word here is engaged. And it's difficult to engage people in a short period of time. But if you draw them in from the very beginning, sharing with them that you're interested in writing this book, what your writing process is, maybe even some of the chapters and what they're about, talk about the highs and lows of your writing process, eventually share your book cover and maybe even your book description with them. Now you've created an engaged audience. They're invested in what you're talking about. Mistake number 6 6, not getting professional help at the right time. So as a writing coach and a developmental editor, there are usually signs that you need guidance. So for example, you might be the type of person that needs accountability. You want someone that you can check in with on a weekly basis, to bounce ideas off of, to ask questions of, or to simply just get feedback. Then hiring a writing coach at this time would be a good idea. Let's say, for example, you have a lot of ideas. You don't know how to structure them. You don't know if you should write a self-help book or a memoir, or you simply just don't know the steps for writing, the steps for publishing, or the steps for marketing your book. Then hiring a coach would be a good idea. Or you might have written your manuscript. The first step you should always take is to get a developmental editor. So you want to make sure that you're hiring a professional at the right time, because not hiring a professional at the right time can cost you time and money depending on where you are in the process. Mistake number 7, underestimating the importance of your book's description. So you finish writing your book and now it's time to write the compelling blurb that's going to go on the back of your book as well as on your Amazon page. And so for a lot of first-time authors, it's difficult to take this big idea that you have and to sum it up in 1 to 2 paragraphs. But the reason why you want to make sure that you take time with this is because this is what's ultimately going to sell your book. Not only is your title and your book cover, but it's also your book description that engages your audience and lets them know that your book is something that they want to read. So you want to make sure that you talk about the reader's pain points in that compelling blurb, but also how your book will solve whatever issue it is that they're dealing with. And you want to sum that up in a short and concise, 1 or 2 paragraphs, and provide that to your reader. And there you have it, 7 of the biggest mistakes that I see nonfiction authors make. If you like these types of videos, or if you're interested in additional writing, publishing, and marketing advice, make sure to subscribe and check out my next video in this series.